Hey everybody, this is Raul Gonzalez.
And I am Oscar Ibieta.
We are Medicare Agent IQ. Just a little background on why we do this. We are just really trying to help agents out there who are struggling in this business. Maybe you're not struggling, maybe you're doing all right, and you're just trying to kind of keep up with what you're doing. That's the reason that we do this show.
A little learning hub for Medicare agents.
We are just coming off last Friday. We celebrated 10 years as an insurance agency for our agents, for our agency, and which was really cool. We did a big party, and that was cool. So the reason I bring that up is I just want everybody to know, hey, look, the reason that these guys know what they're talking about, man, we've been doing this a long time. Yeah. So I've been in the business now 16 years, and it's funny. When I started, I was a young man. I was 27 years old when I first started in Medicare. Here I am today. How old were you?
I was 24. I'm 10 years into the game. 10 years into the game, I was a 24-year-old kid who had no insurance background whatsoever. Came into this, started doing Medicare, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to do today is I wanted to talk a little bit about overcoming objections. I think that I was meeting with an agent just yesterday actually, and we were kind of talking, and one of the things that came up in our conversation is like if you're sitting at retail, and retail being like if you have a table set up at a grocery store here in Texas, San Antonio, we have the Great HEB, which is a very popular grocery store chain. But if you're sitting in a place like that where someone come up to you and they say something like, hey, how are you? I already have United Healthcare. I'm doing great. And then they start walking away. And I talked to him about that, and he says, he's like, yeah, normally what I'll do is I'll say, oh, great. And then just kind of let them walk away. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do. like what we need to be doing in that type of situation is we need to be trying to what would you say in that situation? Someone comes up to you, hey, Oscar, hey, how are you? Hope you're doing well. I already have United Healthcare. I'm doing great.
Great. United Healthcare is a great plan. Which one do you have? They have so many different types.
Yeah.
And just you're engaging in conversation. You're not asking that yes or no question. Right. You're asking a question, an open-ended question, right? We always talk about asking open-ended questions. You're trying to get them to, rather than walking away, they're going to maybe pull out their card. That's what you're hoping, or they're able to tell you exactly which plan it is that they've got.
Yeah, I might even say something like, oh, so you have the new plan with the $2,000 in dental or something like that. And, obviously our goal is not just to move someone from one United Healthcare plan to the other, but if the situation presents itself, I always look at these situations and I say, you know what, that person could very well benefit from having the extra dental coverage. So I might bring that up, but it opens up a conversation where you might even be able to move them to another plan because it basically opens up a conversation. And so that's what we want to talk about today is just kind of furthering that is overcoming objections, things that you might hear, whether you're out in the field or even sitting in front of somebody in just really just not kind of giving in. So it's an important there. I want to make a distinction when I talk about this. The distinction is that we are not supposed to be aggressive in our sales, right? Like we don't want to put any kind of pressure on these seniors. I mean, seniors, they deserve respect. We're not here to pressure them. But what I will say is that sometimes we have to rebuttal. We have to say, you know what? There's a lot of different options that you could be taking advantage of, and we just want to make sure that you're aware of these. So just kind of want to go through a couple of these and just kind of imagine that you are in an appointment with someone.
Yeah, you don't want to be passive. I think that's what we're getting at is, and I used to do it early on when I first started. I would do retail, and people would come up and exactly what you just said. I've got United Healthcare, and at the time, United Healthcare still is one of the top plans. So I used to think, gosh, they've already got one of the best plans here in town. I'm just going to let them walk away. But then I learned, okay, I can't be so passive. I need to engage without being aggressive, but you do want to be somewhat assertive and engage them into a conversation, because you got to think about it. As agents, we have to certify when it comes to being able to sell these Medicare Advantage plans, these products, and we have to test on these things annually, and we have to be familiar with all the products that are available in the market. The seniors that we're working with, they're not doing these things. They're not certifying. They're not testing. They don't know what changes are coming to the plans. They don't know. They may not even know what benefits that they currently have just because they haven't taken the time to review their benefits in several years. And so that's where, again, rather than letting them just walk away from you at the retail table, you want to try to engage them in a conversation that's going to open up more things.
Yeah, I think for new agents, one of the things that we see is that they are so gun shy because of all of the times we tell them you're not allowed to be aggressive, you're not allowed to apply pressure on people, and so they take that as, oh, I just really need to back away, right. and I really can't engage with people, but you can absolutely do that. The heart of it, of these rules of not applying pressure to people, is you don't want to be one of those people who's right in front of grandma, no, you got to go with this, grandma, that kind of thing. That's not who you want to be, and it's not a way to be successful in this business. But stopping and overcoming those objections. One of the big things to me is kind of like looking at my responsibility to the individual that's in front of me. And what I mean is when I'm sitting in front of somebody, they could very well really benefit from a change in plan. And all I want to do as a professional is figure out if there is a way to meet their needs in a better way. And of course, by doing that, then I make some money to do that, right?
Improving their situation. Right. It's a win for everybody. It's a win for them because they're going to benefit from it, understanding that there are some new options or some better options without saying the word better, right? When you're with them. And of course, at the end of the day, we're putting them in a better position. We're getting paid to do that. That's the business that we're in.
Yeah. So just imagine right now that you're in an appointment and you've just you're sitting with someone, and the plan that makes kind of the most sense for that individual, they say, you know what, the most important thing to me is I don't want to lose my doctor. And so I kind of if we're in an appointment, what kind of response do you have to that? Like look here, Oscar, I just really don't want to lose my doctor. They're very important to me.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you said that, because that's usually one of the first questions that I ask people is, who is your doctor? And is it important for you to keep that doctor? Because a lot of times, if it is, and that's the doctor that you want to stay with, and that's where we start. That's our starting point. As a broker, I'm contracted to work with several different insurance companies. So I'm able to basically do some shopping around for you. And so if you tell me that you're with Dr. Smith and you don't want to lose Dr. Smith, then that's where I start. I go to Dr. Smith's, I look him up online, and I look at all the different insurance plans that he accepts, that he's in network with, and then I get to doing my homework, and I kind of see which plan may make the most sense for you. But other times people may tell me, hey, I'm not happy with my doctor, and I've actually been looking for another doctor, but I just don't know where to look. Then I can make a suggestion then. But in your case, Raul, you're happy with your doctor. You don't want to lose your doctor, so we start with Mr. Smith. So right now, you've got the Humana plan. I'm going to do some homework, and I'm going to see what other insurances he takes, and then we'll get together, assuming this is a phone call, right? Pause, right? Assuming this is a phone call, or if we're in person, if we're not in person just yet, I'm going to do some homework for you, Raul, and see what other insurance plans that Dr. Smith is in the network. I want to stop right there, and I want to mention something. So there will be times when you're going to walk into an appointment blind. Meaning you don't have any information. You don't know who their doctor is. You don't know who what medications they're on, what insurance plan they might be on. There are going to be situations where that's going to happen. But a lot of the time, most of the time, you're able to collect this information on the front end before you actually go into that meeting. And it's important to know these things so that you can better prepare, so that when you walk into that appointment, you've already got a plan A and you have a plan B as far as what direction that appointment's going to go. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And we actually have a little worksheet that we give to agents and say, hey, look, these are questions that you want to ask your the prospect, the person that you're going to be meeting with, so that it helps you better prepare for that appointment.
Yeah. And to be honest, like when I'm in an appointment, I'll usually say something along the lines of, hey, look, there's two different people that I meet. Sometimes someone fits right in the middle. One of those people that I meet is say, hey, look, the most important thing to me is that I keep my doctor. Other people will come up to me and they'll say, the most important thing to me is that I am able to save money, Raul. Let's be honest. That's where I'm at financially. I need to save every penny that I can. And some people will say, you know what? I'm right in the middle. Where do you fall within that spectrum? And a lot of times people will say, well, I'm somewhere in the middle, but that opens it up to, okay, I might be willing to change my doctor. Right. Other people, like my wife, I always bring her up. She's like really attached to her doctors, and she's like, man, I will not move away from those doctors, and to the point where we're literally paying more for our health insurance because she needs to keep that doctor. And I understand that there's some people that are in that situation, and we have to work within that. So, but the important part here is that, for most people, you might be able to make a change. You might not lose your doctor, So just kind of overcoming that objection. I think there's a lot of ways to approach it, a lot of ways to talk through that. Another thing, to be real honest, is I've seen this happen before, where I'll talk to an individual and they'll say, and this usually just happens more in the smaller towns, but they're like, yeah, I'm with this doctor right now. And to be honest, what they've said is that they only accept original Medicare. That's always that's one of my frustrations. Yeah. When I'm out there, I'm like, man, that's not fair to, I get it. Look, for the doctor, hey dude, you're rich already. Sorry, I don't mean, but it's something I'm passionate about, because these doctors, they're fine, right? But what I get worried about is that senior who's on a fixed income, and they're being told that sorry, we're only going to accept original Medicare. It's too much paperwork for us.
Right.
Well, isn't that senior worth it? So to be honest, sometimes I'll have that conversation. A lot of times I can just kind of casually mention that, hey, look, my big concern here is when I hear that a doctor's only accepting original Medicare, is that ultimately the person that is footing the bill for a lot of those expensive things is you. And that's a concern of mine, because under original Medicare, if you choose a supplement, right now you might be able to afford the $100 a month. But my big concern is, will you be able to in 10 years afford $300 a month? Right. And I've had it, it's important in these things to bring up real life situations, people that you've actually dealt with and talked to. And so I had a lady that, and I think I've brought this up in the podcast before, last AEP. She was one of the first people that I signed up. She called me last AEP and she's like, Raul, I just can't do it anymore. I'm paying $300 a month for my med sup. And I also have to pay $45 a month for my prescription drug coverage. She's like, I just can't afford it anymore. So we were able to move her over to an Advantage plan with a maximum out of pocket of $2,900. She's in Corpus Christi, I believe, and so maximum out of pocket of $2,900 or so.
Worst case scenario,
she's
her max
still
out of
in a
pocket,
better
she's
situation.
saving money.
Yeah. And she's like, well, I'm really concerned because I have a knee surgery coming up. Okay, so you go into the hospital for 5 days, and all you're paying, and I can't remember what the copay was. I think it was less than $100 a day.
But they think that they're looking at this huge deductible, this crazy out-of-pocket expense. I don't want that Medicare Advantage plan. That's why I have a supplement. But it's our job to explain that.
So that's why I bring this up to I'll bring that up to them and just kind of hey, look, there's these situations. So the big concern here, the big takeaway is that I knew a lady who was in her 10th year on a Medicare supplement, and all of a sudden she's paying $300 a month, $330 a month. So I bring that up to them. Some people might say, okay, then I'll just be on a Medicare supplement as long as I can afford it. Okay, that's perfectly fine. We'll do that. Let's stay in contact with each other, and I'll continue to be your agent. And when that time comes, I would love to help you get onto an Advantage plan. Some people will think about it and then make a move. I had somebody who did that this year. They ultimately decided that they were going to, again, they're in a small town, like in Medina County, Texas, real small county. And so they were in a real small town there, and he was pretty attached to this doctor. But once we started talking and I presented it in that way, he ended up going with an Advantage plan. Again, my heart was not for me, it was doing what was best for him. Yeah. And when I see people that are on a fixed income that realistically, how they used to call like a Medicare supplement, like the Cadillac option, right? The Cadillac, that was the luxury car back in the day. So that's how that became like kind of the Cadillac plan. But that would be a Medicare supplement. My heart is, I'm not trying to sell you the Cadillac here. I'm trying to get you in a situation where you can afford what you're on. And so ultimately not trying to change their mind, but just trying to give them different perspectives and help them make an informed decision.
Yeah.
So,
and going back to my doctor only takes original Medicare, one of the things that I would say when I'm in the household is I say, hey, look, that might make sense for the doctor's office there. Maybe it just makes their life a little bit easier when it comes to billing, less paperwork, like you mentioned. Yeah. But you got to remember, that's only one part of all of the benefits that Medicare covers. We're gonna cover that. You have your primary doctor, you have your specialist. What happens if you need an MRI? What happens if you end up in the hospital? What happens if you need therapy? These are all services that you're gonna be receiving outside of your doctor's office. So I always tell people, you've got to be selfish in making this decision, because at the end of the day, you have to do what makes the most sense for you. So I just wanted to touch on that before we move on.
No, I wasn't trying to stop you. I was just trying to.
Yeah, no, I got it. Bad habits I'm trying to break.
So another question that sometimes people end up getting is, I've heard changing plans is a hassle, and to be honest, I don't want to deal with that. What do you tell people to that, Oscar?
It's simple. You don't even have to do anything. You wouldn't have to call and cancel your old insurance. Once this new insurance goes into place, it cancels out your old insurance, and it always begins the first of the following month. So today it's only the 15th of the month. We're only halfway through, so it's going to have time to process, get through. You'll have your card before the end of the month, and so at the beginning of next month, your new plan will kick in and your old plan already cancels out. So that's it. What concerns do you have about or what have you heard?
Yeah, so well, just kind of informing my doctor and like, what if my doctor is not happy that I moved to this insurance?
Well, they're in the network with this plan, with the plan that you currently have, and with the plan that we're going to be getting you on. They're a network, so they're used to working with this insurance. Next time you go in there, just let them know, hey, this is my new insurance card. It's just a matter of updating it in the system.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, the kind of the direction that I go in that type of situation is be like, well, that's what you have me for. Yeah, I'm here to kind of take care of those concerns. I'm here to help you move through this process easily, and to where if anything does come up. So again, just everything that you just said right now, Oscar, but then when we get to a point where we say, and if anything else comes up where there is a challenge where we're like, oh man, what do we do here? Well, then at that point, we will go ahead and you just call me and I'll figure it out. I'll help you take care of it. Yeah. Remember, I do this all the time. And so I help people all the time get through this, but very rarely do I see anything come up where there's an issue in moving. A lot of times that can help.
It's the cherry on top. I mean, it's the value added service that you bring to them as their agent. So again, they may or may not even know who their agent is, but now that you're here with them, you're there to save the day if they come up with any obstacles, any hurdles that they need to overcome.
Right. What's the biggest objection, the objection of I'm happy with my current insurance? Just any thoughts that you would have if somebody, so this would be more of like you meet someone at a retail event or just at an event. What's your kind of response to that? Do you have a canned response, or is it different for every person?
Most of the time, it's just if I'm asking what insurance it is that they have, if they haven't told me. But then I may ask them, when did you sign up for that insurance? And that's kind of it helps me get an idea as to what my next question is going to be, because if they tell me, well, I just signed up for it, then the conversation can go a different way. If they tell me that they've had that plan for the last 4 years, then I'm going to open it up and say, well, you do know that the benefits do change from 1 year to the next. If you've had that same plan for 4 years, those benefits are not what they looked like when you initially signed up for it. So, and there are a lot of new plans that have come into the market, whether it's from the same insurance company or from other insurance companies. So it's always good to take the time to do a plan review and make sure that your benefits are still what you want them to be, or take a look and see what other options are maybe out there.
Yeah, I think that's a big one for me with how I would respond. And what I am going to touch on is, like you mentioned, if they signed up 4 years ago, there's so many new plans that are coming up with so many new things. Like, you've heard of the grocery card, that people are getting. There's certain plans with grocery cards, and of course you only speak to those if you're if you're in a market where they have
Right.
those things, because we don't want to be like the old Joe Namath commercials, right? Where they're just like, yeah, what about getting all your money back on your Part
Right.
B? Like we're not trying again to be dishonest in any way. I think that's a big important part. But I would let them know there's just so many new options. If it were me, I would review it on an annual basis. Oh yeah, but that's a lot of work. That's what you have me for, is that once I become your agent, then I'm going to review the plans. And if I ever look at things and I say, hey, this client needs to end up switching their plan, I'm going to help them. I'm going to help them do that.
Yeah.
And so I would bring that up to them. Like, don't worry. Like once I review your plan for the first time and get you on the right plan, then from now on, it's my responsibility to look into this on a yearly basis for you.
Yep.
And so I think that's a big one. What is it if you talk to somebody and they say, my spouse and I want to be on the same plan, Oscar? What are your thoughts to that, and kind of as an objection?
Well, let's look into that. You got to remember, Medicare plans are individual plans. There aren't family plans the way you might have, maybe when you were working, you would have your insurance through your work and you could add your spouse or any dependents. When it comes to Medicare, all these plans are individual plans. And if you've probably already know, you get so much mail and so many phone calls. There's so many different plan options. There's a reason for that, because everybody's different, and one plan might make sense for one individual and a different plan might make sense for another individual. Now, who knows? Maybe the same plan makes sense for both of you, but that's something that we're going to do when we sit down and we dive into it and actually figure out what it is that's important to you, what's important to your spouse. Maybe it's doctors, maybe you have certain medications that you're taking where one option might make sense might make more sense over another. And I always like to share that with people, because you might be sitting at the Thanksgiving table with your family and they say, well, I've got Aetna and that's the best plan there is, and that's the plan that you need to be on. Why don't you have Aetna? Well, Aetna is a great plan, but maybe that's the plan that makes the most sense for that individual. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the plan that makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason that there's like 14 or 15 different plans in every market, right?
At least.
Yeah. And it's because of the fact that there's not one size fits all in Medicare. Everybody has different needs, including spouses. And so I always bring this up, and I brought it up just a minute ago. So my wife, if we were turning 65, we would be shopping together, and she would certainly go with a Medicare supplement, and I would certainly go with an HMO. So that, I mean, couldn't get more different than that, right?
Yeah.
But we have completely different needs and what's important to us. And so if we're truly doing a full needs analysis and getting to know what's important to each individual, it may or may not be the same things. So to her, the most important thing is having the doctor of her choice, and we can afford the premium, so she would probably go with a Medicare supplement. And for myself, I want to save money, and so I'm willing to change my doctor. To me, there's enough good doctors, especially if you live in a large market. Like we live in San Antonio, so there's doctors on every corner, right? So for me, it's not a hard decision. I can easily just say, oh, you know what? I'll just get the doctor around the corner, and if I don't like them, I'm on an HMO. I can change the next month into another doctor that I like until I'm happy. So I always bring that up. And so when I'm having conversations, these are the kind of conversations I'm having with the seniors. I'm not in a situation with the seniors where I'm just, where I'm timid. I'm just being open and honest and having, we're two people here. I'm just trying to help you figure out what's best for you. So let's do it together. And so I'm having a conversation in that way.
You want to come off as genuine too, right? Never come off as a salesman. You never want to be pushy or salesy. You just want to say, hey, look, that's my job. That's what I do for a living. It's my job to help you and get the most out of your benefits. Let's sit down and do that.
Let's do it. Big one that I see happen a lot, and this is for people who are turning 65 usually, or even people who are a couple years into it. I don't need prescription drug coverage, Oscar, because I don't take any prescription drugs.
Yeah.
What's the objection? How do you overcome that objection?
Well, here's a reality, Raul, is that's fine now because you're nice and healthy. You're not taking any prescription drugs, but people are required to enroll into a Medicare or into a prescription drug plan, because if they don't, and later on down the road you do need prescriptions, there is a penalty that you'd have to pay for every month. That
and I might
drug coverage.
I might reword that, because they're not required to enroll.
Right.
And that's
to avoid a penalty, I guess.
Right. That's exactly right. So, but one of the big things that I tell people is, obviously when you're 65, there's not as much of a need for prescriptions when you're first becoming Medicare eligible. But as we age, there could be that need. There could be that once we get to be 75 years old, our doctor tells us, hey, look, if you would like to continue to live, you're going to have to be on this medication. What if that medication is $300-$400 a month? Now we'd say, oh, I really needed that prescription drug coverage. And because you chose not to do that, now you will be having to have a late enrollment penalty, and it's going to be for the rest of your life. And if you've gone 10 years, it's 1% per month for every month that you could have had it. So I don't know how many, what's 120 months, right? So 120%. So if the premium is only $50 a month for the average person on a Medicare plan, now you're paying double that, more than double that. Right. So I would always bring that up. Of course, we're not planning for how we are today. That's the same way that I talk to people about Medicare supplement premiums. I don't want us to think about what they are today. I want us to realistically think, if in 10 years, can we afford what they could possibly go up to? That's how I want to help you make these decisions. It's not based off of today, but off of when you're going to really need it, because that's when you really need it. Today, you're preparing for that future. Right. That's why it's called insurance, right? So we're trying to figure out what the right game plan is. So I would always bring that up. And every once in a while you'll talk to someone, oh, well, I wouldn't take medications if, I would just die. I've seen that happen so many times. They're like, okay, there's no rebuttal to that. They're like, okay.
One easy thing to say is you got to remember, this is insurance. What is insurance? It's the transfer of risk. It's something that the best kind of insurance is the one that you never have to use, right? But if you're not taking prescription drugs, then let's look at a Medicare Advantage plan, because there are a lot of Medicare Advantage plans that have no premium and they include prescription drug coverage. So even though you're not taking any prescription drugs, at the very least, let's get you on a Medicare Advantage plan that has no premium. It includes drug coverage. So that way down the road, we're not having to talk about facing any penalties and what those costs might look like.
Yeah, I think one of the I want to jump on to another one real quick, because if you're talking to someone who has a Medicare supplement and you're selling Medicare Advantage plans, and one of the big things that people will tell you is, I'm worried about out-of-pocket costs. My biggest fear of leaving my Medicare supplement is that I know that how much I'm going to pay. I know, say you're talking to someone who's 75 years old, right? And we just touched on it briefly, but I want to spend a little bit more time on, or even someone who is 70, they're only paying $200 a month now for their Medicare supplement. How do we overcome that? Is it the maximum out of pocket when we're dealing with that?
Yeah, the max out of pocket. And then the other thing is, I mentioned earlier, a lot of times people think that if they go onto a Medicare Advantage plan, they're subject to these huge deductibles. They're going to have, if they need that knee replacement surgery, that the costs are going to be catastrophic. And when the reality is that they're not. It's usually a fixed copay that you're paying for these things. Or if you end up getting hospitalized for it, you're staying overnight, then you have a fixed copay for that hospitalization. They usually just, they're used to maybe that insurance back before they had Medicare, where they had to pay that big deductible and those other high expenses, when the reality is that's not how it looks with these Medicare Advantage plans. So one of the questions that I'll probably ask is, or that I want to find out is, have you always had a Medicare supplement since you've gotten onto Medicare? A lot of times the answer is yes. And so I'll talk about the trial right period. That's one thing that I want to talk to them about is, so if you've always had a Medicare supplement since you first became eligible, you actually have what's called the Medicare trial right period, where it allows you to basically test drive a Medicare Advantage plan for up to a year. And if it turns out not to be what you thought it was going to be, then you can go back onto your Medicare supplement, no questions asked. So that kind of removes a little bit of, it removes that fear, that wall that they have up, thinking if I leave this Medicare supplement, I can't go back to it. That's one piece. But again, Medicare Advantage plans, they're going to have fixed costs, and maybe talk about going through a plan review and showing them how it works and what those costs would actually look like. And then maybe pair it with a hospital indemnity plan.
Man, I love that. I love that. Hey, so here's what we're going to do, because I think this is we're having a good conversation. Yeah. We're going to come back. We're going to do this again. We're going to do a full hour on this. So we're going to be coming back, and we're going to just on the same subject. We're just going to run it back. So next week we'll have the same exact subject, just a couple other objections we can run through. So thank you guys.